Come inside, Ajay. We're waiting for you.
The school loomed ahead, half swallowed by shadows. Its windows, cracked and smeared with dirt, reflected the dying orange of the late afternoon sun. A single bell, long broken, hung crooked from the roof, swaying slightly in the cold wind, creaking with a sound that seemed almost like a warning. AJ stepped cautiously onto the cracked pavement, the soles of his sneakers scraping against scattered shards of glass. The air smelled of damp cement and rust, a scent that seemed almost alive in its heaviness. Somewhere inside, a floorboard groaned, slow and deliberate. He paused. Silence. Then, just at the edge of hearing, a faint whisper. They never left. AJ's stomach tightened. The voice came from nowhere and everywhere at once. He spun, heart hammering, but the yard was empty. Only the skeletal frames of swings moved in the wind. Something shifted inside the doorway, a flicker of movement, not quite human. A desk, toppled long ago, now sat upright, as if someone had placed it there moments ago. Chalk dust drifted in the weak sunlight, forming shapes that made AJ blink. The words, "Don't look back," scratched themselves across the blackboard, perfectly legible despite decades of neglect. A shiver crawled up his spine. He took a step toward the hall. Curiosity warred with instinct. The whispers grew, overlapping, urgent and distant all at once. He froze as a shadow detached itself from the far end of the corridor. A figure, hunched, motionless, watching. AJ's breath hitched. The first floor groaned. A low, resonant sound as if the building itself were waking. Something unseen moved above him. He wanted to run, but the figure's dark gaze held him there. And then, a child's laughter, echoing, impossibly close, yet coming from the empty classroom behind him. Ajay stood at the edge of the abandoned schoolyard, the late afternoon sun casting long, uneven shadows across cracked pavement. He had walked past this place 100 times on his way home from school, always noticing the peeling paint and broken windows, but never imagining what it might feel like to step inside. Now, with only a flashlight in one hand and his phone in the other, he felt the chill of anticipation crawl over his skin. The front doors hung slightly ajar, groaning on their rusted hinges as if inviting him or warning him not to enter. He hesitated, the air thick with the scent of damp wood and mildew. Every instinct told him to leave, yet something deeper, a curiosity mixed with an almost foolish courage, pushed him forward. Inside, the hallways were dim and narrow, lined with lockers dented and scratched with decades of neglect. The floorboards creaked under his weight, sending echoes bouncing down the empty corridors. Sunlight filtered through shattered windows, painting jagged patterns across the dust-covered tiles. The silence felt unnatural, as though the building were holding its breath, waiting. A cold draft swept past him. He shivered, rubbing his arms. Then he heard it, soft, almost imperceptible, like the brush of fabric against skin. A whisper followed, "You shouldn't be here." Ajay froze. His heart hammered so loudly he was certain it would give him away. "Who's there?" he called, voice trembling despite his attempt to sound steady. Silence answered. Only the faint creak of a distant door swinging in rhythm with the wind. He stepped into a classroom. Broken desks lay scattered like fallen soldiers, the blackboard still faintly covered with chalk dust from long-ago lessons. Something moved in the corner of his vision. He spun, flashlight slicing through the darkness. Nothing. Just shadows. Yet the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. A sudden, sharp sound, a metallic clang, made him jump. His flashlight flickered. He cursed under his breath, pressing the button again. A faint message appeared on the blackboard, written in spidery chalk letters. "Leave before it finds you." Ajay swallowed hard, a dry lump in his throat. It's just some kids messing around," he muttered, trying to convince himself. But the words seemed to shift when he blinked. He could have sworn the letters twisted into shapes that resembled figures watching him. The wind howled through broken windows, carrying faint echoes of laughter. Not the carefree laughter of children, but something hollow, drawn out, impossible to place. His flashlight caught a movement at the far end of the hallway, something hunched and dark, unmoving, staring. A sudden thump from above startled him. Something or someone was moving on the second floor. His chest tightened. He wanted to run, but a pull, a strange magnetic weight, kept him rooted to the spot. The school seemed alive now, groaning and shifting around him, walls breathing, floors creaking in rhythm with some unseen presence. He took a hesitant step forward. Another whisper came, softer, closer, almost caressing his ear. "It knows you're here." AJ's stomach turned. Sweat prickled his forehead. He wanted to laugh at himself for being scared. But the echo of that voice felt wrong, ancient and personal, like it had been waiting for him all these years. The hallway stretched endlessly, the light from his flashlight failing to reach its end. A staircase loomed ahead, leading to the second floor, where the thumps had originated. Each step groaned under the weight of the past, carrying the whispers of students long gone, secrets buried and forgotten, or perhaps not. He heard it again, from behind him, a faint dragging sound. Something brushed past the back of his jacket and he spun around. Nothing, only dust motes dancing in the weak beam of light. Ajay's phone buzzed, an incoming message. He glanced at it automatically. Blank, no sender, nothing. And yet a line of text appeared on the screen, typed out slowly, as though by invisible fingers. "You're not alone." Panic clawed at his chest. The rational part of him screamed to leave, to run and never look back. But another part, the one that had pulled him here in the first place, whispered, "Find out why." A sudden noise above, like a floorboard snapping under weight, made him jump again. Something shifted on the second floor, a shadow detaching itself from the darkness. The school seemed to sigh, long and low, as if exhaling in anticipation. AJ's flashlight flickered violently. For a brief heartbeat, he saw a figure, hunched and silent, standing at the top of the stairs, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Then it was gone. He swallowed hard. His own voice barely a whisper. I have to see." The hallway stretched ahead, dark and endless, every echo of his footstep bouncing like a warning. And in that silence, he realized the truth. Something was waiting for him inside, and once it noticed him, it wouldn't let go. Ajay's flashlight flickered as he ascended the stairs, each step groaning like a wounded animal. The second floor stretched before him, long corridors lined with doors hanging off hinges, some barely clinging to the frames. Dust swirled in the weak beams of light, forming ghostly shapes that seemed almost human in their movement. Every instinct screamed to turn back, yet he couldn't, not now. Some presence was pulling him forward. The air grew colder, unnaturally so. His breath fogged in front of him, and the faint metallic tang of rusted pipes and decay coated his tongue. A single locker door rattled, slowly, deliberately, like it was breathing. Ajay froze. Then he heard it. A whisper, faint but unmistakable. "You shouldn't be here." "Who's there?" His voice trembled despite himself. The echo mocked him, bouncing down the corridor, growing fainter, fading into nothing. Silence followed, heavier than the whisper itself. He pushed open a classroom door. Broken desks lay in chaotic heaps, chalkboards streaked with half-erased warnings, old posters curling with age. As he stepped further inside, he noticed something that made his stomach tighten. Footprints in the dust. Small ones like a child's, leading from the door toward the far corner. Ajay crouched, tracing them with his flashlight. The prints ended abruptly. No one was there. A soft scraping sound came from the hallway behind him. He spun, but the corridor was empty. Only shadows stretched, leaning toward him as if trying to warn or consume him. "Hello?" His voice cracked, swallowed almost immediately by the echoing emptiness. A sudden chill brushed his shoulder. Ajay yelped and swung the flashlight. A figure crouched at the end of the hall for a heartbeat. Small, hunched, pale, featureless, and then vanished. His heart hammering, he stumbled forward, and the corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, doors multiplying, shadows deepening. The first whispering neighbor Ajay stopped at the landing, listening. He remembered the old caretaker he had met outside, Mr. Sharma, who had shaken his head when AJ mentioned exploring. "I warned you once, boy." "Once isn't enough," the old man had said. "Some things never leave. This school, it remembers." AJ's mind churned. Remembers? How could a building remember? The idea seemed absurd. Yet the whispers he'd heard already didn't feel like imagination. The air itself felt alive. A door ahead creaked open. Faint light spilled from the gap. He pushed it, revealing a small classroom with desks overturned, papers strewn like dry leaves. A journal lay on the teacher's desk. He picked it up, flipping it open. The handwriting was jagged, frantic. The children, one by one, they vanish. The walls watch and the shadows. They speak. Don't stay after sunset. It knows when you are alone. He shivered. The words were decades old, yet the fear etched in them felt immediate, alive. Suddenly, a voice, soft and tremulous, floated from the corner. "Why are you here?" AJ swung his flashlight. A girl, pale and thin, crouched in the shadows, her eyes wide and hollow. I'm just curious," he stammered. She shook her head. "No one leaves." Not really. Before he could ask more, she vanished. Only the sound of faint laughter lingered, curling around the walls, echoing through the hallway. Micro-events, paranoia. Builds as he moved forward, the school seemed to warp. Doors appeared where none had been before. Windows reflected shadows that didn't match the hallways. Each classroom told a fragment of the school's twisted history, faded drawings of children, scratched warnings on desks, peeling photographs of students with eyes scratched out. Ajay's mind began to twist with paranoia. Was he imagining movement in the corner of his eye? Whispers followed him, sometimes close, sometimes far. Every time he looked back, the hall appeared empty. Yet he could swear the shadowed figure was closer each time. Small, unnerving events compounded the tension. Footsteps echoed upstairs, though no one was there. Chalk lines appeared on blackboards as if freshly drawn. He is watching. A swing creaked in a corner, moving without wind or touch. Books fell off shelves, landing open on pages with ominous sketches of faceless figures. AJ spoke aloud, hoping to ground himself. "It's just a building, old, broken, nothing else." A whisper replied, almost immediately, "You're lying to yourself." He stumbled backward, heart racing, realizing that denial meant nothing here. Something within these walls was aware, watching, waiting. The legend emerges. Reaching the far end of the second floor, AJ discovered the library. The shelves were collapsed, books scattered, but one desk remained intact. On it lay another journal, older, leather-bound, yellowed with age. Flipping through it, Ajay discovered the school's dark past. Decades ago, a teacher named Mr. Anand had been accused of cruel punishments and ritualistic practices involving students who disappeared mysteriously. Rumors whispered that he had made a pact with something beyond comprehension, an entity that lived within the school. When the authorities investigated, no traces of the missing children remained, only the building, untouched but alive. The journal detailed strange phenomena, children speaking in voices not their own, shadows moving against the light, teachers disappearing for hours. Returning pale, empty-eyed, AJ read a line aloud, almost involuntarily. "If you hear the whispers, don't follow them. They take more than your fear. They take you." The words reverberated through the empty library. He glanced at the window. A shadow passed outside, a figure hunched, moving with impossible speed. He spun, and it vanished, increasing threats. The school's horrors escalated. AJ moved from classroom to classroom, witnessing small but undeniable signs of the supernatural. A blackboard covered itself in writing overnight. "He knows you." Footprints appeared in dust, leading into walls. The sound of children laughing, crying, whispering, even when rooms were empty. A distant piano playing in a forgotten music room. Keys moving though untouched. Dialogue punctuated the dread. "You shouldn't be here," came a whisper from nowhere. I'm leaving," AJ stammered, panic rising. "You can't." The voice was closer, colder. Each incident shredded the sense of safety. Even familiar spaces turned alien. The school itself seemed alive, bending reality to trap him. Flashbacks and historical horror. Ajay remembered the caretaker's warnings outside. "It waits for the curious, the bold, the foolish. It feeds on your mind, your fear. Once inside, it remembers your name." Flashbacks to missing students he had read about as a child surged into his thoughts. Stories of kids vanishing in schoolyards, whispers of shadows dragging them into walls. For the first time, he understood the warnings weren't exaggerations. They were accounts of the inevitable. Another diary entry detailed a child's final hours. "I hear the whispers. They tell me to look, but when I do, I see nothing. They are everywhere. I can't sleep. The walls breathe. I am alone. Forever." AJ felt the words in his bones. The school was not a place. It was a trap, a predator, waiting for the right mind to break. Paranoia peaks. By now, AJ's fear was suffocating. Every step he took echoed with unnatural sounds, faint scratching from inside walls, doors slamming without wind, soft breathing from classrooms. Yet when he looked, the rooms were empty. He spoke aloud, trying to maintain sanity. "This isn't real. It's just my imagination." A chorus of whispers replied, overlapping, indistinguishable. "It sees you. It knows. You can't leave." A cold hand brushed his shoulder. He spun. No one. Only shadows stretched across walls like long, reaching fingers. He realized, with creeping horror, that curiosity had led him into a labyrinth. Every corridor was a cage, every whisper a lure, every shadow a predator. And the deeper he went, the more the school claimed of him. Not just his presence, but his certainty, his mind, his will. Ending conflict development. The climax of this section approached as Ajay reached the central hall. The space was massive, cathedral-like, lined with broken windows and cracked tiles. Shadows shifted unnaturally, light from his flashlight bending in impossible ways. A faint, almost imperceptible rhythm echoed through the space, the heartbeat of the building itself. He froze as a figure emerged at the far end of the hall, hunched, pale, indistinct, watching. The whispers crescendoed into intelligible speech, voices of children, teachers, and something else. "You belong to us now." AJ's knees shook. Fear clawed at him, sharp and intimate. He wanted to scream, but the words lodged in his throat. The first clear, unmistakable sign of the supernatural was before him, undeniable. It was only a glimpse, fleeting, but enough to prove the school's truth. He had crossed the point of no return. The building waited, patient, hungry, and Ajay, trembling, knew it would not let him leave alive. The central hall stretched before Ajay like a mausoleum of memories long dead. Broken sunlight filtered through the jagged windows, splintering into uneven, trembling rays across the cracked floor. Dust hung thick in the air, shimmering faintly in his flashlight beam. Every step he took echoed, amplified, and then swallowed by the oppressive silence, as if the building itself were listening, judging, savoring each movement. He stopped in the center, heart pounding, chest tight. The shadows along the walls seemed to stretch, elongate, creeping toward him like living fingers. And then he saw it, a figure, hunched and pale, shifting unnaturally at the far end of the hall. Its face was featureless, yet AJ could feel its gaze, piercing, deliberate. A chorus of whispers filled the space, growing louder, overlapping voices from all directions. They were indistinct, a jumbled hum of sorrow, warning, and malice. "Leave, leave, leave. You belong here. It knows you." Ajay swallowed hard, gripping his flashlight so tightly his knuckles turned white. I don't belong here," he shouted, voice cracking. But the words dissolved in the hollow air, absorbed by the building. The figure moved closer, impossibly fast, gliding rather than walking. Shadows pooled beneath it, stretching outward like black ink creeping across the tiles. Ajay stumbled backward, tripping over a fallen chair. The flashlight slid across the floor, its beam catching glimpses of the walls, faded chalk messages, peeling posters, drawings of faceless children, all writhing as though alive. "Don't." "You see?" A whisper hissed directly into his ear. He spun, finding nothing. The sound of children laughing, crying, whispering filled every corner simultaneously. The hall seemed to warp around him. Ceiling beams bent at impossible angles, floors rippled like water, and doors opened into empty voids. Ajay's rational mind screamed against the impossible. This was a building, not a dream. Yet every sensory detail insisted otherwise. He stumbled into the abandoned library. Books tumbled from shelves, pages fluttering as though caught in an invisible wind. A piano in the corner played a discordant chord, keys moving by themselves. Shadows danced along the walls, forming shapes, hands reaching, faces twisting, children bending unnaturally. Ajay backed into the center, realizing the entity wasn't alone. The entire school had become alive. Every shadow, every object, every whisper was part of it, an intelligence older than the walls themselves. It was aware of him, waiting for the perfect moment, psychological breakdown. Begins a figure materialized beside him, tall, thin, its head tilted unnaturally, faceless. A voice erupted from the darkness. "You've seen too much. You shouldn't have come." AJ stumbled backward. I want to leave." "I just want to leave. You already belong." The air thickened, pressing against his chest. Sweat dripped from his forehead. His thoughts raced uncontrollably. "I'm losing my mind. This isn't real. It's just a building. But the building answered him, answering every doubt, every denial. Doors slammed violently, books flew off shelves, and the shadows multiplied. Figures emerged from corners and walls. Children, teachers, adults long gone, twisted into grotesque forms, but eerily familiar. Their mouths moved, whispering incomprehensible words, yet their eyes fixed on AJ, accusing, demanding, hungry. He tried to scream, but his voice was swallowed by the cacophony. Panic clawed at his chest. He ran down the aisles, the shadows following, elongating, twisting into hands that reached, gripping the edges of his clothing, tugging at him. Hallucinations and flashbacks. The horror intensified. Memories of missing students, tales he had read, and warnings he had ignored merged with the present. Faces appeared in every shattered window, grinning, crying, whispering his name. He remembered the journal entries. "If you hear the whispers, don't follow them. They take more than your fear. They take you." Now he understood. The building wasn't merely haunted. It was sentient. Every creak, every whisper, every shadow was a predator, feeding not on flesh but on mind, on sanity, on hope. He tried to flee to the main staircase, but the hallway stretched impossibly. Corridors twisted, doors led to nowhere, and every window reflected a version of him, terrified, older, hollow-eyed. The whispers crescendoed, overlapping into a symphony of terror. "You can't leave. You can't leave. You can't leave." Ajay's chest heaved. Sweat ran down his temples. His hands trembled violently. He pressed himself against the wall, sliding slowly to the floor. Shadows gathered around him, whispering, laughing, screaming, crying. "Look at us. Look at yourself. Do you see?" The visions became unbearable. He saw children trapped inside walls, their faces pressed against brick, mouths moving in silent screams. Teachers levitated, mouths agape, eyes voids of despair. The air thickened, each breath a struggle, confrontation with the entity. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced into a single, massive figure. Its body was indistinct, shifting yet human in form. Its face remained featureless, but its presence radiated inevitability. "You are mine," it whispered. AJ staggered backward. "No, I'm not yours." "You never were. You just didn't know it." The floor beneath him groaned, rippling like liquid. Walls bent, leaning closer, enclosing him. Every exit vanished, replaced by endless black corridors. The entity moved closer, a gliding shadow that consumed the light. Ajay reached for his phone, desperately hoping for a call, a light, anything. Nothing. The screen flickered, and the same message appeared he had seen before. "You can't leave." A whisper, a scream, a chorus. He could not distinguish any longer. The entity's presence was inside him now, touching every thought, twisting every fear. "You wanted to see, to know. Now you are part of us," it said, its voice merging with every whisper in the hall. AJ's knees buckled. He fell to the floor, curling into himself. Shadows wrapped around him, pressing, suffocating, whispering, pulling. The walls themselves seemed to breathe, their decayed paint and broken glass forming shapes of mouths, eyes, and hands. He screamed, but the sound was absorbed, leaving only silence, punctuated by the whispers that had become deafening. Dialogue as turning points. "No." "Stay away," Ajay shouted, struggling. "It is too late." "You cannot resist. You are curious. I can fight." "Fighting is useless." "It is inevitable. You belong." The shadows twisted further, forming into countless figures. Children, teachers, figures from every generation. Their mouths moved in unison. "We take all who see, all who listen, all who know." Ajay's mind fractured under the weight of the revelation. Time itself seemed to warp. The ceiling stretched upward, floors sank, shadows shifted faster than perception could follow. His own reflection in the broken windows grinned back at him, eyes black voids, mouth open in silent scream. Total collapse of reality. The hallways now were infinite, twisting, merging, separating. Doors opened into endless voids. Windows reflected eternity. The entity hovered before him, faceless, yet undeniably aware of every fear, every thought, every heartbeat. "Run," whispered the entity, mockingly. "There is nowhere to go." AJ stumbled forward. A classroom appeared, doors wide, blackboards glowing with faded chalk. "Welcome home." From the shadows, a figure stepped forward. It was a teacher, disfigured, eyes hollow, mouth moving unnaturally. "Do you remember us?" AJ shook his head violently, tears streaming. "No, I don't." "You do, you saw." "You know, and now." "You stay." The air thickened, heavy and suffocating. The entity enveloped him in darkness. The whispers rose to a deafening roar. "You belong!" Every part of the hall twisted into him. Walls, floor, ceiling, shadows, absorbing him into the building itself. He felt his mind fray, his memories bleed into the darkness. The last thing he saw was the figure of a child, pale, hunched, whispering directly into his ear. Finally, "You're home!" AJ's scream was swallowed by the building. Silence followed, a heavy, suffocating silence, punctuated by the faint sound of a bell creaking in the wind, as if the school itself exhaled. Closing climax imagery. The hall returned to its stillness, dust settling in long, unbroken streaks. Broken desks lay scattered. Chalkboards were blank again. The sunlight fell unevenly across the tiles. No one would know he had ever been here. But the shadows had shifted slightly, lingering in corners where light could not reach. Whispers echoed faintly through the halls, waiting for the next curious mind, the next intruder, the next victim to step inside. The sun had set hours ago, leaving the abandoned school wrapped in a thick, suffocating darkness. Outside, the wind whispered through broken windows, rattling doors like distant echoes of forgotten laughter. Ajay, or what remained of him, was gone, absorbed into the building, or perhaps something darker entirely. No footprints, no broken flashlight, no sign that anyone had entered that night. Only the faint whisper of a presence lingered, carried by the walls themselves. The caretaker, Mr. Sharma, shuffled along the cracked pavement outside, his lantern flickering in rhythm with his cautious steps. He paused at the main doors, listening. A soft exhale of wind, or perhaps something else, escaped from the hallway beyond. "They came again," he murmured, voice heavy with resignation. "And it took what it wanted." He entered, moving quietly through the hallways he had walked for decades. Broken desks and scattered papers greeted him like familiar old friends. Chalkboards were blank, black, and empty, yet he knew better. The school remembered. It always remembered. The aftermath days passed. The town whispered about a missing teenager, a curious boy named Ajay who had gone exploring and never returned. Search parties scoured the surrounding streets and fields, but the school yielded no trace of him. No footprints, no torn clothing, no voice crying out in the shadows. Only silence, thick, impenetrable, unnatural. Neighbors reported strange phenomena. Windows rattled in abandoned rooms. Doors creaked open on their own. Lights flickered when the wind was still. Some claimed to hear faint laughter echoing long into the night. Distorted and hollow. Those who had encountered the school in its active state. The caretaker. A few brave townspeople spoke only in hushed tones. They knew the truth, and it was a truth too terrible to repeat aloud. Once the building chose you, it took more than your presence. It took your mind, your soul, the very essence of who you were. Lingering psychological horror. Within the town, stories of the school became legend. Parents warned children never to approach its rusted gates. Teenagers dared each other to peer through broken windows, but few ever stayed long. They reported shadows that moved independently, whispers in languages they couldn't understand, and the feeling of being watched, even from across the street. Yet those who stayed too long returned changed, hollow-eyed, muttering words that made no sense, speaking of corridors that twisted into infinity, doors that led nowhere, and figures that watched from the dark. They carried the residue of fear, the lasting impression of the building's consciousness pressing against their minds. AJ's disappearance became part of this cycle. People whispered that sometimes at night, if you stood too close to the old school and listened carefully, you could hear his voice among the chorus of whispers. Not asking for help, not calling for rescue, simply acknowledging, endlessly, that he was still inside. Symbolic reflections. The school itself sat silently during the day, seemingly inert, but its presence was palpable. Rusted metal groaned under the sun's heat, peeling paint flaked into the dust, and broken glass sparkled like frozen tears. Yet the eyes that watched from the shadows, AJ's eyes now part of the collective gaze, remained unseen. Inside, corridors twisted subtly, doors shifted imperceptibly, and shadows moved against the grain of light. Every object, every mark, every whisper bore the memory of what had happened. Visitors never realized it, but the school was not merely a building. It was an entity, ancient, patient, insatiable, and it remembered every soul it had ever claimed. Final chilling incidents. Weeks later, a young boy named Samir, curious like IJ had been, dared to approach the school. He pressed his hand against the rusted gate, feeling a shiver crawl up his spine. For a moment everything was silent. Then faintly the sound of footsteps echoed behind him. A desk toppled inside. A blackboard streaked itself with words that had appeared and vanished countless times before. "We see you." Samir froze, eyes wide. A whisper, soft, close, and impossible to place, echoed in his ear, finally. Another to play with. The wind carried the sound of children laughing, faint but growing, swirling from the windows, the walls, the floors. Samir stumbled backward, heart racing, and for the first time, realized the horror he had glimpsed was alive, patient, and waiting. Lingering unease. The townspeople noticed the changes immediately. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord in nearby streets. Dogs refused to approach the school at night, howling at empty walls. Even those who had never entered the building felt its presence pressing against their subconscious. A quiet, unshakable dread that something terrible lingered just beyond perception. The caretaker, old and worn, walked past the school one evening. He paused, peering through a broken window into a hallway that stretched endlessly, distorted beyond comprehension. He whispered a name no one else spoke aloud. Ajay. Inside, somewhere beyond the perception of normal life, Ajay turned his head. Eyes empty but conscious. He was no longer a boy, yet he was not gone. His form lingered among the shadows, part of the building, part of its memory, and part of its hunger. And as the caretaker stepped away, the school sighed, a low, slow exhale that reverberated through the empty halls, carrying with it the unspoken promise. It was waiting, always waiting, and it never forgot. Final image. The last rays of twilight faded, leaving the school in almost complete darkness. Broken desks, shattered windows, and peeling walls sat silently. Yet the faint outlines of movement were visible to those who dared to look, shapes twisting and bending in corners, shadows stretching impossibly, faint whispers threading through the air. Somewhere, far inside, a single faint light glimmered, Ajay's flashlight, or perhaps just a memory of it. It illuminated a hallway that should not exist, stretching endlessly, lined with doors that led nowhere, blackboards inscribed with warnings that never fully vanished. And if you stood too close, listened too intently, you could hear it, the faintest sound of a boy's voice, whispering in perfect unison with the chorus of the building itself. "You are never leaving." The town slept uneasily. The wind carried voices through the streets, and the abandoned school waited patiently for the next curious mind, the next soul too bold or too foolish to resist. The horror was complete, silent, invisible, inevitable, and it lingered,